Welcome to the course Business Analytics and Text Mining Modeling using Python. So, in previous few lectures we have started our discussion on Python, and we are going through hands on exercises using Jupyter Notebook platform. So, what we will do, we will quickly go through whatever we have discussed so far. So, we will quickly run through the lines of code that we have discussed in previous few lectures, and then we will pick up from where we left in the previous lecture. So, let us start. So, first thing we are required to load the library modules. So, you can see importing numpy HNP. So, these aspects we have discussed also we need to configure. So, I will just run through some of the starting lines of code. So, that some of the variables that we initialize typically we would be using them later on also. So, that we will be able to refresh our memories, okay, what were the values of those variables and how they were initialized and all that. Hello world variable creation, right, tab completion features. So, some of these things we are not trying out. So, you will see some error, but that is not important. Main focus is some of the functionality that will just to refresh your memory, writing function and some of these things, question operator. Magic commands. So, some of these things we have already gone through. Listing of files and folder, as you can see, running Python script, looking at values that are part of that script, loading a script into cells. All these things we have gone through. Matplotlib integration. So, this we have gone through, plotting using the same, and then essential Python programming concept that we have discussed, how the code is to be written and all that. So, that we have gone through. Then how to separate multiple statements on a single line, though not recommended, but still. So, all those things we have talked about. Function and object calls, method calls, positional and keyword arguments. So, all this we have gone through. Variable assignments, as you can see, passing objects, dynamic references, then the aspect related to typed language and how Python is a strong typed language, on all those things we have gone through before. So, just quickly I will run through this part, printing and some other functions, important function, for example is instance. So, these could be really useful sometimes, importing a test script and calling those functions, and so those aspects also we have covered. Then function calls as well. Then we reach to the I think in the previous lecture we were into this binary operators. So, this is how we can perform some of these operations: addition, subtraction, divide, division, floor division. Just like this is more like C style integer division that we discussed in the previous lecture. Raised to the power, this is also you can see bitwise AND, bitwise OR, bitwise exclusive OR, comparisons and checks. So, V1 if we want to compare two variables V1 and V2, V1 to equals fine, V1 equal to V2, and not equal, V1 not equal, not operator we can use and we can find out. So, you can see V1 was equal to V2. So, that came out true, and not equal came out as false. Then less than or equal to, so for example these two value we can compare like this, 18 less than or equal to 48.5. So, immediately we will get the results. So, these are some of the binary operators that are part of the Python. So, for example 18 greater than 48.5, you can see false. Similarly, if you want to check whether two references refer to the same Python object or not. So, this is something also we discussed in the previous lecture. So, we have these keywords is and is not. So, A is B, and so in this fashion we can find out V1 V2. So, we know that V1 V2 are referring to the same object. So, true. B is not C, this also will come out to be true. Then we also talked about the none object. So here you can see none object, this is in a sense Python null value. So there is only one instance of this object. So sometimes this is also useful in many situations, especially as we will see when we are dealing with conditional expressions and functional arguments, especially when we are indicating the default values of common default values of those functional arguments, then none object is quite useful in that sense. Now I think we covered up to this much. Now let us start our discussion on some of the other basics of Python. So next thing is mutable and immutable objects. So we need to understand this, what are the objects, what are the Python objects that can actually be modified. So when we say mutable objects, essentially we are talking about objects or values that they contain, the values of other objects that they may contain, whether they can be modified or not. If they are mutable, they can be modified, and if they are immutable, they cannot be modified. So how do how these aspects are important and how they can be really useful while we are writing our block of code. So this is important. So in terms of mutable objects, some of the examples we have given, for example list, dict, numpy arrays and most user defined functions. So these are some of the examples of mutable objects. So for example here we have defined variable v3 as a list, first element, then 5, then again a list is another element, 9 having 2 elements, 9 and 18. So if we just run this, and if we want to because this is list, so it is mutable as we discussed. So we can change a particular element within this list. So you can see v3 2. So I am going to change this particular element here, and let us run this. So you can see the list is now changed from OM5 and the third element that was there. See here in the bracket notation, when we are indicating the index as 2, it is actually third element there, because it's the counting starts from 0. So 0 1 2. So in that sense it is the, when we say 2, so it indicates the third element actually. So you can see the third element has been changed. Similarly we have some immutable objects. So some of the examples that will fall under this category are strings and tuples. So these are immutable objects. So here what I have done, again I have initialized a variable, you can see a tuple here. So values 1 2 and third element itself is a tuple 3 4, and let us run this. And here because tuple an immutable object, so if I try to change one of the elements, so in the next line of code I am trying to change one of the element v4 1, that is second element. So if I want to change it to the text, this is string 1, then I will get error, because you can see tuple object does not support item assignment, because this being an immutable object, so it does not support this kind of assignment, this kind of modification. So this is how we need to understand which kind of objects are mutable, which are immutable, and accordingly we are supposed to write our functions and other pieces of code so that they work well. And these objects, of course modifying any object, of course these objects have their own side effect. So when we are using them within a function and we are trying to manipulate them, it is better programming practice if we are not trying to change modify an existing object. Rather it would be preferable to treat them as immutable. That is better programming practices. Now let us move into the some of the built-in types for handling numerical data, strings, boolean, true false values and dates and time, these kind of objects. So let us start. So here we will first talk about numeric types. So there are two main numeric types that we have in Python environment. One is int, that is for integer numbers, and then float, that is for decimal numbers. So these are the two primary numeric types that we have in Python. So in the first example I have again initialized a variable I with this value 1 2 3, slightly longest value, just to indicate that larger values, arbitrary larger values can also be stored in this particular type. So here I initialized as this large number 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. So if I just run this, this is the output that I get. Similarly, a float I can initialize. In this also, and I have taken a number of decimal places. So 1.2345689. So if I just run this, this variable is going to be initialized with the value. The floating, these floating point numbers can also be, these decimal number can also be expressed using scientific notation. So I can have another variable f1 and I can express the values, the value of the scientific notation, for example 1.23 and e to the power minus 4. So if I run this, I will get so this value is equivalent to this one 0.000123. So in these formats we can display these value. Now let us move to the next built-in type, that is strings. So in this we can write string literals, whatever the text that we want to initialize as a string type, we can write that, we can type that within single quotes or within double quotes. So these are the two ways, two main primary ways available to us. So for example, here I have initialized str1, the first variable, as within single quotes. So if I run this, I will have this str1 initialized, and the output you can see within double quotes, within single quotes way. And then another string variable str2, here I am using the double quotes. So similarly, this also I can initialize in this fashion. Now sometimes you might require multi-line strings, so with line breaks of course. So in those situations we can use what is called triple quotes. So here you can see we can either go for triple single quotes or triple double quotes. So in this fashion you can see here str3 and then triple double quotes, and then I have text in first line and second line, third line in this fashion. So in this fashion I can initialize this. If I run this, so you can see in the output, as you can see that first line, because this was a new line character, is clearly there because no text is there, and then I have the first line, that is long string is spanning, and then the again the new line character, then multiple lines, then new line character triple quotes way, and then again new line character. So in this if you look at this output, if I want to count the number of lines that are part of this particular string, this multi-line string, then actually I can use the number of new line characters that are part of this this string, and in that using that I can actually count. So just to display the same thing, if I can use this count function, count method. So str3 and dot count, and I am just passing this character, new line character here. If I just run this, you can see 4 is the output. So there are 4 new line characters there. So depending on that, using this particular count, I can further calculate the number of multiple lines that are there, depending on the way I define it. So in this fashion we can count the number of lines also. Now in terms of mutability, Python strings are immutable. So how do we, because in many times we will face this situation where we will like to modify a particular string into something else. So how we are supposed to do this? So main thing is we can create a new string by replacing the set of characters that we want to actually modify. So we can look at the set of characters in the original string that we can modify and just replace those characters with the desired set of characters and replace it and create a new string object. So here you can see in the example I have str4, so it says it is a string. So if I run this, I will get this is my original string. Now if I want to change this into it is a longer string. So if I want to pick the particular index, you can see I want to insert between a and string the longer word, if I want to insert something there, and if I try in this fashion str4 8 picking up that index here to point out that element and just want to insert this word, it won't work, because again just like the previously we had done similar kind of thing, that a string object does not support item assignment. So because it being an immutable object, so this modification is not allowed in Python environment. So how do we do it? What we do is for this object str4, we can call the method dot replace, and here you can see we will replace string with longer string. So, if I just run this, I will create a new string object str5, and I will get my modified string. So, here in the output you can see it is a longer string. So, in this fashion I can modify, and as I said earlier also, this is better practice, this is considered to be better programming practice to consider most of the objects as as immutable, and code write your code in that fashion itself. Similarly, if you want to convert our Python objects to a string, so other object types like integer or float, if we want to convert them into a string, so that is allowed. So, for example, if I want to create a string 6 variable here, I can use this str function, I can pass on I. If you remember, I is the integer variable that we had created earlier, and it had this value 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. So, if I just run this, it will be converted into a string type. So, we are using the string str function here. You can see the output, it shows that it is within single quotes we have this value. So, now this integer has got converted into a string type. Similarly, if I want to print this string variable str6 now, so I will get the this print in the appropriate format, as you can see here 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 without single quotes. So, in this fashion I can print. Now, let us move on. Now, another aspect here is that we can also consider a string as a sequence of Unicode characters. In that sense, it can be treated just like any other sequences like list and tuples. So, certain modifications, certain things can be done. So, let us take an example here. If we had the str5, we have already created this string variable str5. If we just use the list function and pass on this variable, you will see that we will be able to create a list of this, and all the characters you can see. If I run this, you can see all the characters that are part of this that were part of this string, they are now part of they have now become elements of this list. So, it is a longer string. So, you can see each of these characters it, then a space, then is, and then a space a. So, all these characters have become, all these characters of this string have become elements of this list. So, in this fashion we can actually treat a string as any other sequence. There is another manipulation that can be performed, it is called slicing. So, we can always slice a string. So, this is the syntax, you can see str5 is the string variable that we have, and within double brackets colon and 7. So, slicing would happen up to that character, and so up to 7th character. So, you can see here if I run this. So, our original string, that is str5, it is a longer string, that would be sliced and we will just get it is a. So, in this fashion slicing is something that is very important in string processing, and especially in the text mining context we would be using this a lot. So, we will have more on this in the coming lectures as well. So, this is another manipulation that we can do. Now, another aspect related to string processing is the escape character. For this we use the backslash character, this one, and if we ever require to write a special characters like new line character /n, if you want to make that as part of the string or print that string, then we can use the escape characters. So, for example, if we have this string str7 within single quotes 12 backslash 34. So, if we try to run this, you can see in the output within single quotes we have 12 we have got all right, then backslash, and then we are getting some other set of character x1c. So, it is not coming as expected, we wanted to print it as is. So, for this we can use backslash character. So, you can see in this string 8, now I am using backslash for printing the other backslash that I wanted to originally print here. So, you can see now str8 within single quotes I have 1 2 backslash, then again backslash. One backslash is working as a escape character, and then another second backslash, and then 34. So, if I run this is what I get, within single quotes, 1 2 and then 2 backslashes and then 3 4. If I want to print this, I will get the appropriate print that I wanted in the first place, 12 backslash 34. So, in this fashion, whenever we are dealing with these special characters which might have some other purposes as well, then we can use the escape character, that is backslash. Now, here you see if I try to print this without using the escape character here. So, if I just run this, you can see I am getting something else. The output is truncated and I am just getting 12. Similarly, if I directly pass on this, if I use the backslash character and directly pass it on to the print, again I will get the appropriate output. A few more examples. Here I am using backslash n. So, if I print without using the escape character, then I will get this output. You can see 12 on the first line, and new line I get the 34. So, this is not what I wanted in the first place. So, I have to use the escape character again. So, here if I run in the next line with the extra backslash for the escape character, then I get the appropriate output. Here you can see 12 and new line character and 34. Similarly, another example, backspace character. Here if I want to print it without the escape character, then again you can see if I run it here, then you can see I wanted to print this within single quotes 12 and then backslash character and then 34. Now, what has happened is because backslash character has the purpose of erasing one character, then you can see the output is coming out to be 1 3 4 and 2 has been erased. What I wanted originally, for that I require the escape character. So, in the next line you can see I am within single quotes I am passing 12, then backslash for the escape character and then backslash b and then 34. If I run this, I will get the output as I wanted. There might be a situation where we might be dealing with a lot of backslashes. So, in that case it might be cumbersome sometimes to type these many backslashes. So, we have another mechanism. So, what we do is we preface the leading quote of the string with R, where this R stands for raw. That means character should be printed interpreted as is and printed accordingly. So, I have initialized another string variable here str9, and you can see it has a lot of backslashes within the single quotes. This backslash has backslash lots, backslash of backslash backslashes. So, if I run this, you can see in the output some unwanted values are also printed. You can see after this this double backslash and then has then double backslash lots double backslash off, and then you can see x08. So, this is not something that we wanted in the first place. So, what I can do is in the string 10 in the another instance you can see I am prefacing the whole string within the single quotes with R. So, it will indicate the interpreter that it is to be interpreted as is. So, if I run this, you can see here now the output is coming as desired. So, everywhere I have the backslashes. So, if I want to use the print function to get the appropriate output, you can see print and str9. If I do this, then if I use the original way of writing this without the escape character str9, then I will get this, and you can see some of the characters are missing. If I use the str10, which has the R as the preface before the string, then I will get the output as desired. You can see this has lots of backslashes and we have just one backslash printed as desired. Now, let us move on. Next thing is about adding two strings. So, concatenation. Previously we have defined str1 and str2. So, here we can add these three string str1, and we can just use this plus operator str1 plus and another string within single quotes space R space and then plus operator and then str2. So, in this fashion we can actually add strings or concatenate strings. So, you can see within single quotes way or double quotes way. So, these 3 strings have been concatenated in this output. Now, let us move on to the next thing, that is string formatting. So, string formatting has a larger scope, but here we will display just one of the example. Later on in the coming lectures we will focus more on this. So, here we are taking this example where we might be required to substitute formatted arguments as per some template or some defined format. So, based on defined format we would like to format string. Typically it might be arguments that we might want to pass on to function or similar kind of situation. So, here first we have defined a template. So, temp1. So, in this we are within single quotes we are typing US IND exchange rate, and the first term that is within curly braces is that first element is floating point number with up to 4 decimal places. Then the second argument is string, and then if you look at the third curly brace here, that is third argument is to be exact integer, so exact number. So, this is the template and this is what we want to print in this fashion. So, if I pass on this value temp1 dot format. So, dot format is the method that is to be used. So, here the first argument is 71.45678. So, if I this is to be used only up to 4 decimal places, of course rounding and all that is to be applied, and then the second argument is a string where we are saying Indian rupees, and then third argument is integer 1. So, you can see our statement would be like US IND exchange rate, and then first argument the value, and then Indian rupees or worth, and then again US dollar and the value. So, if I run this temp1 dot format, I am passing some values. If I run this, so in this fashion I get the formatted output. US IND exchange rate is 71.4568. You can see it is rounded the passed down value, and you can compare this one. Indian rupees are worth US $1. So, this is how we can do string formatting. So, next built-in type is booleans. So, in this we have as we know 2 typical values, true and false. So, typically they are combined with and or keywords, and we use them comparisons and other conditional expressions. Typically the evaluation leads to either true or false result. So, just to display these boolean aspect as well. So, few examples, true and false. If I run this, I will get false. If false or true, if I run this, I will get true. So, typically whenever we are using these boolean values, the comparisons or other conditional expression, this is how it will happen. So, at this point we would like to stop, and in the next lecture we will pick up our discussion from this point, and we will start discussion on typecasting. Thank you.